task now is to just wind it down and kind of conclude it. And then I will ask Honorable Tau, who is the Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP, to come and do a vote of thanks. And just by quick way of summary, I think what the presenters did this afternoon was really gave us a very wide notion of the complexity of migration. I think we heard from them that it is global. It is not simply something that happens in our continent. It is as old as our civilizations. It is geographic. It is about geography, but it's also about history, and it is about labor in particular. Minister reminded us that it's also very purposeful, because there's always a purpose behind anybody moving. And all of us, I think, in this room have moved from one place to another in our lifetimes, or certainly our families have. We also identified the fact that it is structural and that it is both costly in many ways, but also extremely beneficial. And I think our Professor Adebayo said quite a bit about the beneficial aspects of migration. We have also heard that it does lead to change in our demographics, that our settlements are changing, they're not what it used to be, and the very interesting comment about the way our townships are changing was mentioned this afternoon. And I like particularly the fact that it does create creoles out of all of us. And in fact, the notion of the fact that we are pure and perfect does not exist. But we also said there's a lot of mythology around migration, because we tend to generalize as human beings. One Nigerian is a thief, therefore all Nigerians are thieves. And therefore, that's how the myths are created. So we need to watch the myths, because not all migrants are, etc., etc., etc. The issues that were raised to identify context, the context in which this migration is taking place, were also very, very, I think, instructive. First, the growing inequality, the growing unemployment, growing poverty in our different 14 countries in SADC. Growing urbanization was also identified as an issue. Economic struggles continue to be had. There's this huge youth dividend, which Professor mentioned when he started talking about getting rid of our boundaries. The issue of climate change, because climate change also leads to people migrating, was raised because the issue of water, the fact that people haven't got water is going to make them move from one place to the other. Also scarcity of resources, security issues, human trafficking, all these are the contexts in which this migration is taking place. And of course, lastly, but not unimportantly for this particular forum, the absence of a real industrial strategy and an unequal development of our region. So these are issues that were raised to identify the context in which we are engaging this issue on. And finally, the mitigation and the solutions, which were mentioned by certainly the Premier as well as the Speaker, were the fact that we really need to find ways in which we can address this challenge. To see, first of all, the challenges as well as the benefits of it, and develop and grow the benefits, but also deal with the challenges. We cannot have a situation where movement is completely free and unregulated. That seems to have been one thing that has come up. Secondly, we need a very robust industrialization and development policy so that everybody can benefit from the richness of our continent. Real issues of inequality need to be addressed in order to create livelihoods. I always say that when the violence happened in our country, in many ways, the so-called foreigners were the buffer between Alexander and Sandton City. Had they not been there, people would have gone straight to Sandton City. So inequality in many ways is far more dangerous than poverty. And finally, we need to implement laws, we need to develop laws, we need to review our ideologies that inform the laws, we need to integrate our communities, educate our communities when we decide that, we would like them to be an integrated entity with people who come and add value to our society. And finally, we need to harmonize the legislation in the entire region. And there are examples, ECOWAS was mentioned, and as well as East Africa community was mentioned. And of course, lastly, for the legislators in particular, to push for the ratification of the protocols so that we don't just agree in principle on what they propose, but we also agree on allocating resources and implement them. We also need to do research. The member talked about research in other African countries to see how many South Africans are there. And lastly, to educate our communities and particularly our young people so that they understand both our geography as well as our history. And so on that note, I will say thank you very much for your attention. I will ask the Honorable Tau to come and make the final vote of thanks. And thank you for your attention.